Every F-35 Lightning II contains more than 920 pounds of rare earth elements. A Virginia-class nuclear submarine, 9,200 pounds. An Arleigh Burke destroyer, 5,200. Every Tomahawk cruise missile, every JDAM smart bomb, every Reaper drone depends on exotic metals most Americans have never heard of, refined in a country the Pentagon calls its pacing threat. China controls 70% of global rare earth mining, 90% of all refining, and between 94 and 95% of the world's permanent magnets, the components that make stealth fighters turn, missiles track, and submarines hunt. The United States imports over 95% of its consumed rare earth compounds. And in 2025, Beijing pulled the trigger. The invisible weight of modern war. Rare earths are 17 metallic elements, 15 lanthanides plus scandium and yttrium. Despite the name, they are not geologically scarce. The rarity is economic, finding them in minimal concentrations, then surviving the chemistry required to separate them from each other and from radioactive byproducts like thorium and uranium. The critical split is light versus heavy. Light rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium, form the world's strongest permanent magnets, neodymium iron boron. But NdFeB magnets lose magnetism at high temperatures.
Whoa! Oh, God. Wow!
To survive a missile's heat plume or a jet turbine, you must add heavy rare earths, dysprosium and terbium. Those come almost exclusively from ionic clay deposits in southern China and Myanmar. Samarium cobalt magnets handle extreme heat in jet engines, radar arrays, and terminal guidance systems. The F-35 carries roughly 50 pounds of SMCO magnets alone. Europium enables targeting displays and night vision. Erbium powers fiber optic battlefield communications and defense laser systems. Terbium forms terphenol D, a magnetostrictive alloy that physically changes shape in a magnetic field, generating the immense acoustic power for high-power naval sonar. The scale of integration across major weapons platforms is staggering. A single Virginia-class submarine requires roughly 9,200 pounds of rare earths for its electric drive motors, sonar arrays, and combat systems. An Arleigh Burke destroyer uses 5,200 pounds for its Aegis combat system, radar, and missile guidance. Every Tomahawk carries NdFeB magnets in its tail fin actuators. Every JDAM uses them for precision trajectory control. Every THAAD and Patriot interceptor relies on high-temperature dysprosium-doped magnets for rapid fin response. And with hundreds of additional F-35s, B-21 stealth bombers, Columbia-class submarines, and autonomous drone swarms in the procurement pipeline, military consumption of rare earths will only escalate. Without these elements, an F-35 cannot steer, a submarine cannot listen, and a missile cannot track. How China built the monopoly. In 2024, global rare earth mine production hit 390,000 metric tons. China mined 270,000, 69%. The United States produced 45,000 tons through MP Materials Mountain Pass mine. Myanmar contributed 31,000 tons of largely unregulated heavy rare earths smuggled directly into Chinese refineries. Australia added 13,000. Everyone else was a rounding error. But mining is just digging up dirt. China controls 90% of global refining, a deliberate industrial strategy spanning decades. Deng Xiaoping declared in 1992 that the Middle East has oil and China has rare earths. Through massive state subsidies, aggressive environmental arbitrage, and metallurgical optimization, Beijing operated processing facilities at profit margins specifically designed to bankrupt Western competitors. It acquired American rare earth technology outright. In 1997, Chinese interests purchased MagnaQuench, shipping $70 million in equipment directly to China. America's previous rare earth champion, Molycorp, went bankrupt in 2015. At the bottom of the funnel, China manufactures 94 to 95% of all finished permanent magnets. In 2024 alone, it exported 58,142 metric tons worth nearly $2.9 billion. Even rare earths mined in California were historically shipped to Asia for processing. As Vulcan Elements executive John Maslin warned, if you have one piece of Chinese equipment in your production line, China has a kill switch and can shut down operations. America's only rare earth mine was feeding China's downstream monopoly. The weaponization timeline. The blueprint was written in September 2010. After Japan arrested a Chinese fishing captain near the Senkaku Islands, Beijing imposed an undeclared embargo on all rare earth exports to Japan, which depended on China for 90% of its supply. Prices spiked tenfold within a year. Japan capitulated. Beijing learned that rare earths could achieve diplomatic surrender without firing a bullet. In 2019, Xi Jinping visited a rare earth magnet facility in Guangzhou as a warning to Washington. By 2023, Beijing restricted gallium and germanium exports. On December 3, 2024, China banned those materials plus antimony from reaching U.S. military end users. On April 4, 2025, retaliating for the Liberation Day tariffs, China restricted 7 heavy rare earths under complex licensing, slapped a 34% reciprocal tariff on U.S. goods, and added defense contractors to its unreliable entity list. On October 9th, controls expanded to 5 more elements. And for the first time, Beijing applied the Foreign Direct Product Rule. Any company anywhere on Earth needed Chinese government approval if their products contained even 0.1% of Chinese origin rare earths. Beijing had granted itself veto power over Western defense manufacturing globally. A fragile truce at the November 2025 Busan Summit paused controls until November 2026, but the legal architecture for total supply chain denial remains intact. The Pentagon's nightmare math. Under the 2021 NDAA, the Pentagon must eliminate Chinese-sourced rare earth magnets from all U.S. weapons platforms by January 1, 2027. Defense primes, Lockheed Martin, RTX, Northrop Grumman, are trapped. The law demands non-Chinese magnets, but Western production at scale will not arrive until the late 2020s. Chinese magnet exports to the U.S. already dropped 22.5% year-over-year in early 2026. The DoD needs 3,000 to 4,000 tons of specialized magnets annually, surging to 10,000 by 2030 as the military transitions toward electric propulsion and expanded drone architectures. In February 2026, Assistant Secretary Catanazzi called China's 95% control of heavy rare earths a clear and present danger to national security. The National Defense Stockpile, historically holding less than $1 billion in assets, received a $2 billion emergency injection through the One Big Beautiful Act. The White House launched Project Vault on February 2, 2026, a $12 billion initiative to build a strategic critical minerals reserve. But financial appropriations cannot conjure materials that are physically blocked from export. And in March 2026, a leak via the South China Morning Post revealed the number that keeps Pentagon planners awake. The United States has roughly 2 months of rare earth supplies under surge conditions. 2 months. If China reinstates a hard embargo, the stockpile is gone in 60 days. Why you can't mine your way out? Mining raw ore solves only 10 to 15% of the supply chain problem. The kill switch is midstream separation, hundreds of sequential solvent extraction steps in hydrometallurgical facilities, processing ores laced with radioactive thorium. Building a separation facility in the U.S. takes 7 to 15 years from permitting to production. Molycorp went bankrupt in 2015 trying. MP Materials is racing to build a domestic mine-to-magnet chain. When hedge fund executives James Litinsky and Michael Rosenthal bought the flooded, bankrupt Mountain Pass mine in 2017, they had no domestic processing capacity. To survive, they partnered with Shenghe Resources, a Chinese state-backed entity, and shipped raw concentrate directly to China for refining. That paradox ended in April 2025 when China's 125% retaliatory tariffs made the trade commercially irrational. MP Materials ceased all shipments and is now stockpiling concentrate, ramping NdPr oxide production in California, and constructing a massive magnet factory in Fort Worth targeting 10,000 metric tons by 2028. But that timeline stretches past the Pentagon's 2027 deadline. The Pentagon's backup plan, a $258 million contract for Lynas Rare Earths to build a heavy rare earth separation facility in Seadrift, Texas, has stalled on environmental permitting over wastewater discharge into San Antonio Bay. By early 2026, Linus admitted significant uncertainty and pivoted to fulfilling DoD contracts from facilities in Malaysia and Western Australia instead. Allied scramble and deep-sea gambits. In February 2026, Secretary Rubio convened 54 nations for the Critical Minerals Ministerial, confirming over $30 billion in government support allocated in 6 months. The US, Japan, and EU are pursuing a price floor mechanism to prevent China from flooding markets to bankrupt Western competitors. Japan's most dramatic gambit, the drilling vessel Chikyu suctioned rare earth-rich mud from 5,700 to 6,000 meters beneath the Pacific near Minamitorishima Island, a technological world first. Researchers estimate over 16 million tons of rare earths below, enough for 700 years of yttrium and dysprosium supply. Japan has spent $250 million developing the extraction equipment since 2018. But mineral economists dismiss it as resource populism. The cost of raising mud through 6 kilometers of ocean is astronomically high, and Japan lacks the processing capacity to refine it. The deep-sea discovery remains decades from altering the balance. Recycling and substitution offer marginal relief. Apple and Tesla are reducing rare earth content in EV motors, but the Pentagon has no such luxury. Substituting dysprosium in an F-35's targeting laser means unacceptable loss of performance. Military platforms operate at the extreme edges of physics. The Taiwan scenario. CSIS ran 26 iterations of a detailed war game simulating a Chinese blockade of Taiwan, published in July 2025. The coalition defeated the invasion, but at catastrophic cost. Dozens of ships, hundreds of aircraft, tens of thousands of service members lost. The hidden constraint was rapid munitions depletion. Every JASSM, every LRASM, requires rare earth magnets for fin actuation and terminal guidance. If Beijing executes a total embargo on day 1, the 2-month stockpile begins burning. Recent Middle East operations consumed $5.6 billion in munitions in just 2 days. Without dysprosium, terbium, and neodymium, production lines for replacement missiles, avionics, and sonar arrays halt. The U.S. fights a come-as-you-are war, unable to replace its most sophisticated weapons while the adversary operates on completely internalized supply lines. 920 pounds of rare earths in every F-35, 9,200 in every Virginia-class submarine. China controls 70% of mining, 90% of refining, 95% of finished magnets. The Pentagon needs up to 10,000 tons per year by 2030 and currently has 2 months of supply. The NDAA deadline for eliminating Chinese magnets is January 2027. The first major domestic magnet factory targets 2028. The Linus, Texas plant may never be built. Japan's deep-sea miracle sits 6 kilometers underwater and decades from viability. The Busan Truce expires in November 2026. The legal architecture for total supply chain shutdown is already written into Chinese law. MP Materials CEO James Litinsky said it plainly. The United States needs permission from the Chinese government to build its own weapons. The question is not whether China has weaponized rare earths. That is settled. The question is whether 2 months of stockpile and $12 billion in emergency funding will be enough to prevent the most powerful military on Earth from being held hostage by the country it was designed to deter.